Okay, so we are looking today at measures of spread, which such as a standard deviation, variance, range, which is the simplest measure of spread, and interquartile range. The most sophisticated of these is standard deviation. Here's an example with two cricket players, two batsmen, and their average scores in various years. You see, the mean has been taken, and they have the same mean. But if we wanted to look at, for example, their consistency, how close they are on average to their mean, you look at standard deviation. And if you calculate it, which you would do on your calculator, you'll find that this player has a smaller standard deviation and therefore would be considered more consistent. So his scores are closer on average to the mean. So it's a way of looking at a measure of spread. It's quite a sophisticated method. And for example, as I said, in this instance, it shows you how consistent it can compare two players and show you how consistent they are. So this player here will be considered more inconsistent. So on your course, we look at population standard deviation. There are different sorts, but we only look at this one. And this is represented by sigma, this notation here. You do not need to know this formula. It used to be on the course, but it isn't anymore. You just need to plug it into your calculator, you lucky people. Linked to standard deviation is variance, which is simply standard deviation squared. So if you're asked to calculate variance instead, which you might be, all you have to do is square your value of standard deviation, and variance is written as sigma squared. So that's the notation they use for it. Let's look at an example, shall we? Yes, why not? So here, this is a revision village question, a fairly straightforward one. So something you can just look at by or answer by looking at the table. So write down the mode, so the most common value. So this should be familiar to you from your IGCSE work. The most common value from a frequency table, obviously look at the highest frequency, so it would be 9. Find the value of the range. Again, you're looking at the highest value minus the smallest value. So the highest value here in this data, I hope obviously, is going to be 11. And the smallest one is 1. So you're going to do 11 minus 1, which I hope we all know is 10. Now, to find the mean and the variance, you would use your calculators. So I've already set it up. I've already popped it into my spreadsheet. And here it is. So I've put frequency, which I've noted down as F, and I've marked my X values, whatever I'm looking at here in this column. So good idea to mark at the top of the columns there. As hopefully we recall, you can go into one way of doing it. It's going to stat calculations, one variable stats, and then click on OK. Select your list. So the first one is X, and the second one, the frequency list, is F, and then click on OK. So make sure you clicked on one free cell beforehand, and that's it. It's utterly ridiculous. So these are the easiest marks you'll ever have. Right. Now you'll see there are two standard deviations here, so there are two different symbols. The one for your course is this one, sigma. Right, all sorts of data that you've been given here. You've got the mean, which is 6.01, which I do believe you want. So let's write that in. So the mean is 6.01 from your GDC, and the variance. So the variance you get from by looking at your standard deviation, which is here. So 3.06, which I'm going to put into my separate calculator here, 592. Now remember that you're looking for the variance, so you have to square your standard deviation. So if we square that, we should get 9.399, so 9.40, as they'll want it, as per usual, to 3 significant figures. So that then is the measure of spread. You've not had to comment in this case, but remember, the higher the variance, the higher the standard deviation, the more spread out the data is from the mean. Okay, we're going to look at another calculator example here. So this is only part of a question. I picked out the important bits that we need to look at now. So hence I've crudely filled in some previous answers. This was actually from a cumulative frequency question, which we've done already. Righty-ho. So again, I have typed in the values into the calculator. I just need to, there's one I saved from earlier. So it should be documents 3, I think. Right. No. So here it is. So again, I have filled in values of X and values of frequency. I've filled in the table. So same old, same old. What a surprise. You go into statistics, you go into stat calculations, and you go into one variable statistics, and you do exactly the same thing. Click the tables and bosh, there you go. The important thing to, of course, mention here, though, is my first column, X, because it is grouped data, then we had to find the median, or the middle value, sorry. So because it's an estimate, I don't know what the actual values are. All I know is there are 10 values between 0 and 30. So you have to estimate. So you go exactly in the middle. So I use 15 here, halfway between 30 and 60. So add them together and divide by 2 is 45. Again, you should be familiar with this from your IGCSEs. So I've put in the mid values there because this is an estimate. There's no way of knowing what the actual value is. All we know is it's between those two. So as I say for the 100th time, it's an estimate. Right, so we should just be able to take the values again from here. So this time we're looking at the mean. So let's move forward there. So you got the mean, 52.5. Remember the mean is X bar. Some other useful values here. So that's all the X values added together, all the value. If you squared X and then added values together, it would be that. And remember, this is the standard deviation we want, this symbol here, sigma. So it's 52.5 and 22.5. So note how I'm using the correct symbol there for the mean, and it matches up with the letters they've used, which is X. And then I'm going to do my best to write sigma here, which I'm not very good at drawing, particularly when I've lost my stylus. So sigma was 22.5. Let's now have a little look back at some of the other things that we can do here. So just a quick reminder. So you got the number of actual values there are. You are given the minimum value, 15. You're given the lower quartile, 45. You're given the median, 45. You're given the upper quartile, 75. The maximum value, and this you will not have to use. Right, so lots of very useful things there. Also, please remember that, some of these, they may be without frequency. So you might just have to input the values in the first column, X, and there might be no frequency. So you can still use your calculator without frequency, of course, but you still go through the same steps. You just wouldn't select a frequency column. I hope that's useful to a degree.